A Not Here, I'll be revealing to you the current top meta raid builds and strats that the top alliances and I use to reach those raid numbers you saw in King God Castle. This information is usually kept under wraps within the English and Western audience, but is quite open in other communities. However, I intend to start breaking that mold right now. Though keep in mind that the raid builds are continually getting changed and adjusted as relics and heroes get added and buffed and nerfed and things like that. In this video, I'll be showing you the current top meta build for the raid boss hero. So first things first, a little preface. This is intended for advanced and top-end players. Having said that, awakening heroes are definitely required. If you're a beginner, please feel free to ask the community or stick around for future videos on my channel. I'll be showing you the standard build and positions, and it'll be exactly that, standard. It'll be up to you to tweak your positioning and your build to suit your needs. That's why practice mode exists, right? So lastly, knowing the build is only about 20% of the work. The rest comes from knowledge in raid forming, positioning, pathing, all of which I won't be going over in this video. Let's quickly talk about what hero boss actually does, and I'll be talking about the boss if the boss has all the divine properties activated. So for the hero boss skill, he'll become untargetable, and then he'll summon these spires instead. So these spires will take half the damage taken, and then it will transfer to the main boss, right? So the first property is pretty important. So hero boss receives less attack damage, but increase in magic damage. I know, even though it says this, the go-to standard meta build that people use is still Mel. This is because mages actually don't do as much damage as a Mel comp does, because she just hits like a truck. And also with split attack damage, it's amazing, right? There are builds out there like Priya hero build that exists, and then there are actually beginner builds like Chunga build, those of which I won't be going over in this video. With these last passives right here, the boss takes less direct damage, and then when he does his skill, he'll do a total of 4 spires instead, and that's pretty much it. Hero boss is actually the hardest and most difficult to take down and to handle. Everyone hates this boss when it comes around in rotation because your damage numbers will always suffer when you try to handle hero boss. So yeah. With Mel build, the key to doing a lot of damage is actually getting split damage bow effects. Of course, +1 attack count helps, but getting a lot of split damage matters a ton. The reason why split damage is actually really good is that it actually doesn't get the reduction factor when you hit the spire. So you'll be hitting the boss for a lot of damage since it also transfers. Actually, if you have a Zhao Yun raid build with split damage effects, it can actually perform pretty well on hero boss. So it's definitely worth to check and see if it's worth dumping your Zhao hit into your hero boss, right? So yeah. Next, let's talk about the build. I'll give you the TLDR reasons for each. I'll be breaking down the builds like so. As usual, carry, supports, booster, conditional, and optional. For carry, we'll be using Mel, as I mentioned, with Awakening 2. Awakening 2 is what I generally prefer and recommend. It has more uptime on damage, but some people simply just prefer Awakening 1. So I recommend just trying out both and see which one you like. Of course, we'll be leaving Mel carry at tier 5. If you get a higher Mel, great, but tier 5 is usually the standard cutoff. And then for supports, for the first one, of course, Bard, she is incredibly important. Awakening 1, and we'll be leaving her at tier 3. With Bard Awakening, she can be kept at only tier 3 while covering most, if not all, Lunaires. The other support is Lunaire, of course. With Awakening 2, you will fill the rest of your glove with her, and then you'll add in as many high-tier loons as possible. And stacking loons is still a thing, even though after her nerf. For damage booster, as I mentioned in my other videos, if you didn't know, there are Hawk, Mara, Rosette, and Mercil. Hawk and Mercil don't require awakenings for the damage boost, whereas Mara and Rosette require awakenings. In hero builds, actually Hawk Awakening 1 is preferred because with Hawk Awakening 1, if you place Hawk on the right side of the field, then he will hit the 2 left spires. You know, apply the 10% damage boost to both of them, so it's really good. However, currently I'm actually recording this on my alt account, so I actually don't have Awakening Hawk, so excuse me. So yeah, Hawk and Awakening 1 is the best, and we will be leaving that at tier 1. And for the next category, conditional, conditional, we actually don't have any conditional units that we use for hero boss, so there's none. For optional, Kayn, of course, feel free to put Kayn on your hero builds. That's what I usually do. So I usually run Mel, Bard, Lunaire, Hawk, and Kayn, and then you kind of have like a free spot, right? You just kind of put in anybody that you want, really. You won't be using them at all. Just be sure not to use a unit that you're intending on using for your other team, right? For altars, it's standard to run 15 hero always, and for the other 10 points, I personally always use 10 greed, as I mentioned. I know some people prefer 10 blacksmith, so I suggest you just try them both out and see what you like. For relics, we'll be running, of course, the standard glove relic. If you don't know what it does, then I'll leave a link down in the description below to my video, of course. For the other one, the current metas, they use Holy Cross from Arena. The last meta was Mask Relic, but it isn't as good anymore due to the Lunaire nerfs. For items, it's pretty similar to Greed Boss. Staffs on highest Lunaire and bows on Mel, and going after that awesome +1 attack count affix for huge damage. Swords on either, I usually put them on Mel first. Armor goes on Bard as a standard. The +1 range affix won't actually screw up the hero builds too much, but you do run into an issue where the boss will aggro Bard instead, so just kind of be careful. But it's not as bad as screwing up Greed build, for example. And of course, Mel is considered a melee unit, so if you combine bows on her, you won't be getting that +1 range on her. So yeah, since this is hero boss, expect low damage numbers. This is absolutely normal. The amount of damage you do to hero boss is around like usually 50 to 75% of what you normally do to something like Greed boss. This is because of damage reduction passives. As I mentioned, hero builds are very dependent on getting that split damage affix on bow items. With this build, with max level heroes, you will get around like 3 to 4 million damage, pretty standard, pretty easily. With +1 attack count or with split or with a combination of them, you're looking at around between like 5 and 9 million damage. And currently, I'm just in a temporary alliance and I haven't touched raid, so I can't really show you the full potential. And I'm also on my alt. I don't really have a previous recording of this either, so unfortunately, I'm only able to show you the small glimpse of how the build goes with a 250k health boss. But yeah, let's go into a practice round real quick with the hero boss and show you what it looks like at the beginning. Alright, so Mel on Holy Spot, and actually rolled pretty high on my extra Lunaires. So I have to adjust this build for my needs, so I do something like this. The idea is that Mel has to go first, and then Bard will have to follow. And when Bard follows, she'll end up like here. And then with Awakening 1, she can cover all of the Lunaires. So you'll see that Mel goes first, then Bard, and then voila. And then the rest is history, really. Unfortunately, I couldn't show you a full sample 30-second round with hero boss, but there it is. The current hero boss meta build that all the top alliances use. Be sure to check out my other raid meta builds that I revealed. Thumbs if you liked it, subs if you loved it, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.